TCU needs to break out the pocketbook and sign Howard Sampson, who was in the transfer portal from North Carolina. He was briefly committed to TCU last offseason, ended up at UNC. It's time to bring him home and get him to stay this time. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're in the middle of transfer portal season. The portal is open, and TCU is trying to add talent to their roster for 2025. One of the players that's a familiar name, Howard Sampson. So if you missed this story last year, or if you're like, hey, that name sounds familiar, but I can't place exactly what the connection is, Howard was at North Texas for a couple of seasons, and it was kind of an interesting recruitment because he didn't play a lot at UNT. He was mainly a reserve tackle, swing tackle type of guy who was available if somebody got hurt. But he was getting all sorts of offers and interest in the transfer portal. And everybody was like, what am I missing here? The production doesn't necessarily match what the attention that he's getting. And the bottom line is Howard Sampson, you can't teach the type of size that he has. He is 6'8", 325 pounds, and he can move pretty well. So it's not just like this huge guy who can't get his feet up and kick out and get a base and pass protect. He's got athleticism as well. So TCU had him committed, and I wouldn't say he was like one of the crown jewels of that transfer portal class just because he wasn't coming with a lot of production. But it felt like, man, this is a good, or in my mind, the way I kind of assessed it, I thought this is a great take as like a developmental project. Get him in here. He's young. He's got plenty of eligibility left. Work with him, get him up to speed, and then hopefully he can be a starter for a few seasons for you. Well, he ends up going to UNC, and I believe the connection there was Randy Clements, who has been an offensive line coach for over 30 years, most notably at Baylor during the Art Briles era, and they had some really good O-linemen during that time. They ran the ball extremely well. Big, physical, all the things you want from that position group. He was at UNT when Howard was there, and he got a job at North Carolina, and Howard went with him, essentially. So he spent last year at UNC, started 12 games, ended up being honorable mention All-ACC. And now he's in the portal again. And I did an entire segment yesterday about Bill Belichick and the potential of him taking the job at North Carolina. Now, that's official. He does have that job. So I would imagine that Bill's a smart guy. He knows personnel. He was in charge of that along with coaching the Patriots for a very long time. I would venture to guess that he looks at the roster or looks at the guys that are possibly going to defect and says, that's someone I'd like to talk to. And there's going to be heavy interest from a lot of different schools because, again, the physical traits are there. And now you're not just banking on he's got the size and athleticism to be a good tackle. It's you've seen him do it at the Power 4 level, and he held his own and did fine. So there's a really high ceiling here. But Jeremy Clark reported yesterday that TCU is going to pursue Howard Sampson. He had some other information in there that, in respect of it being behind a paywall, I won't share. But if you want to know more, you can go to Horned Frog Blitz and read his article about it. But TCU is going to pursue Howard Sampson. They have a connection. I mean, they have him committed. He knows his coaching staff well. And to me, this is the type of player. If TCU is going to take the next step, and we're talking about conference title appearance, battling for a Big 12 championship, playoff, and so forth, this is the guy that I would break out the checkbook and be like, what do we got to do? And there's going to be competition. I mean, this is a dude that's going to get offered by a lot of different schools. I think the SEC will be involved. But if you look at TCU's offense the last couple of years, they've been very effective piling up yards. This year, they were a lot more effective scoring touchdowns when they needed to and putting up points. I think Kendall Briles did a fantastic job this season. What have they been missing? A lot of you have been talking about a guy like Micah Hudson, 5 stars in the portal. And I'm not saying that TCU should not go after him. I'm not discouraging that. I think TCU picks up the phone. They say, hey, what's the deal? Even though it looks like he's going to end up at Texas A&M. I saw that prediction yesterday. But I'm not saying TCU shouldn't pursue players like that. If I am in charge of building a roster for the Horned Frogs right now, though, and I look at what they've done over the last few seasons, receiver has not been an issue. I have confidence in Malcolm Kelly and this offensive coaching staff to put together a receiver room that can go out there and be productive and make plays and be good targets for Josh Hoover. And we'll get to in a minute, there's some guys on the board that they're going after. Solidifying this offensive line is going to be the key. Now, I think on the interior, you got a pretty good foundation with James Brockermeyer and Colton Deary, potentially Cade Bennett, as long as he's up and healthy. Carson Bruno could be a depth piece. Like you've got some guys there. At tackle, it's still kind of a musical chair situation. Now, Ben Taylor Whitfield, Ryan Hughes, if I had to guess today, I would say those would be your starters. And these are young guys that you trust. But this is more of a proven commodity. And he has the physical build that you want along with some production. So I would say this is priority number one in my mind. Now, I get it. The coaching staff, they've made receiver. They've circled it. And you look at the offers they've put out. Chase Sewell, Joseph Manjack, Goody from Colorado State, his first name escapes me right now. They're going after receivers. And I think they'll get talent there. And I'm not really worried about them being able to not completely replace what Jack Besh and Savion Williams have done because those are special players, but get pretty close. Howard Sampson is a dude that I would be super interested in landing and finding. And to me, that's one of the key pieces of this next season, if you're going to improve, is getting that offensive line in a better place. And they were good in pass protection last year. So it's not like it was a total wash. But you need to run the ball more consistently, and you have to do it outside of some sort of gadgety package that Savion Williams won't be around to run next year because he's going to be playing in the NFL. So that's a name to watch. Another name to watch, Ansel Dinboo from Washington State, but in relation to TCU, he's originally from Aledo, played his high school ball there. Chris Hummer, also from 247 Sports, he's reporting that Ansel will be in for a visit with TCU later this week. When I look at his stats, the big thing that stands out, and this is a defensive tackle we're talking about, 6 sacks in 2024. 14 tackles, solo tackles, 6 sacks, 24 tackles overall. This is a guy that can make plays. And young player at Wazoo, got on the field, made an impact. And when you're talking about a dude who can get pressure from the interior, that is a game changer. I like what Marcus Deal brings to the table. Connor Lindgren showed a few nice things in various spots. Utah was his best game. That was where it was like, oh, man, this is a dude that's making plays. They're bringing in some JUCO guys, Perry Cole, Kelton Bickle. But Ansel would be another, I don't think just a depth piece. I think this is a guy that could start right away along that defensive line. And that D-line group is fascinating because so much of it, in my mind, kind of hinges on what do you get from Paul Olawale coming back from this Achilles injury. They've added a few junior college prospects, as I said, that they expect to contribute immediately. But this would be another dude who could come in and should be able to start right away, or at the very least would be a nice rotational piece moving forward. So Ansel Dinboo, originally from Aledo, 2 seasons at Wazoo. In 2023, didn't play a whole lot as a true freshman, which you'd expect. Only 2 tackles, and none of them were solo. But then last year starts to pop with 6 sacks and 24 tackles overall. So they're working that angle. And one more name I want to point out that Jeremy Clark mentioned this morning actually is Devin Turner, defensive back out of Northwestern. So one position group that suddenly has become more important is safety. you're losing a lot there. And then Jamel Johnson hit the portal. Richard Toney's in the portal. Now, the good news there is I think safety, corner, wide receiver, it's all kind of in the same boat of you can not that you want to lose talent, but there's a plethora of those players that are available. So I think it's one of the easier positions to find impactful help. But Devin Turner has a ton of experience. He's played at Northwestern for 3 seasons. His best year was in 2023, 79 tackles total, and 5 passes defended. Last year, an uptick in interceptions, 3 picks. In 2023, had 1 interception. So 4 picks for his career, 51 tackles this past season. Had a pick 6 this season against Illinois, made some plays. Can't teach ball skills. That's something like every level of football for a DB. It's sort of either have it or you don't. And Devin appears to have it and has the ability to make plays. Also someone who can come up and make tackles and be physical, which is what they want in this defense. I'm very intrigued to see the types of players that Andy Avalos is pursuing. We got a picture of it in this high school class. Definitely guys on the edge who can rush the passer. And then, those hybrid safety linebacker types that can run with athletes, but also can step up and make plays when they have to in the box. And Devin Turner looks like he fits that mold as well. Big Ten guy, been around for a while, should be able to pick up what they're throwing at him quickly. Northwestern dude, so I assume he's pretty smart. I don't think I would have gotten into Northwestern. In fact, I know I wouldn't have. Definitely not a Medill journalist here on Locked on Horned Frogs. So another name there, Devin Turner, safety out of Northwestern. And then some guys that they've been pursuing. The one that I would say probably most imminent that we could see a commitment soon is Joseph Manjack, just based on some information I got from some people out of Houston and the fact that it would just make a lot of sense if he ended up at TCU. We'll have plenty more coverage of the portal in the weeks leading up to the bowl game. When we come back, officially got word that it's going to happen. Bill Belichick will be the coach for North Carolina next season. Also, we'll talk about the bowl game and a lot of young guys that we want to see play. How do they handle Haas Haney in this game and just moving forward as Josh Hoover appears to be the man once again for next season? We'll talk about that next here on Locked on Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day. I do want to mention one of our great sponsors as we roll along here at the end of segment 1, and that is FanDuel. FanDuel is where the game starts. Now make it easy for you each and every day. Love what they do for us. You can go to FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Don't forget, one $5 bet, you win that bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. And you can live bet NFL games now. So if you're watching a game, you suddenly got a hunch, or you think, man, I feel like somebody's going to make a comeback. I think somebody's going to hold on to this lead. You can live bet these games with new odds at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Again, it's FanDuel.com or FanDuel app. It's where the game starts. So I did an episode yesterday, or a segment yesterday, on Bill Belichick, and he is now officially the new coach at North Carolina, which is really intriguing, man. I mean, what a weird situation. He was at New England for such a long time. They ended up parting ways with him. He thought he would just bounce right back and get an NFL job. It didn't happen last year. He goes and does ESPN stuff, some media things, and now has the opportunity to jump back into coaching, and he's doing it at a basketball school. And I don't say that jokingly. I just mean, I guess in some ways, Bill wants to call the shots. That's been the way he's done it everywhere. According to Ollie Conley, who's done some good reporting on the story, he gave North Carolina a 400-page document that he called his organizational Bible. And he was like, look, if you want me, these are the things that I need. I don't need to work. So if you want to have me here, I need to have a dedicated scouting department. They're going to hire a general manager that's going to have his own buyout, and he will work with scouts and with recruiting people, and that's going to be its own separate entity. And Bill will handle the in-game stuff, in-season roster management, etc. TCU opens the season against UNC. If you're like, why are you talking about this? Well, TCU opens the season against UNC. Hopefully, Howard Sampson, a little revenge game for him going back to Chapel Hill. But Sonny Dykes versus Bill Belichick. And many people have pointed out this is really similar to the spotlight that was put on TCU when they played Colorado a few years ago to open the season. Deion Sanders' first game there. Of course, we know how that ended, unfortunately. I'm going to be really intrigued to see what his roster looks like. Because on one hand, who wouldn't want to go play for Bill Belichick? I mean, it just makes sense. You would think he would have a number of talented players at his disposal. But he's never really been a recruiter. I mean, everything he's done in the NFL has been evaluating, assessing talent, drafting them, and then developing them as players. So this is a new world where you're trying to sell yourself to people. And it might kind of sound silly, like what does Bill Belichick have to do to sell folks other than throw a bunch of Super Bowl rings on the table? And I know that's going to move the needle for a lot of kids. He's going to have to find a way to communicate and relate to them, though. So I don't know what to expect. I'm not sure if this roster is going to be – the thing about Colorado was they had some day one picks immediately on that team. So TCU still should have won that ball game, but Travis Hunter, Shadur Sanders, and then some other skill guys that were ridiculous. They had a number of dudes who right away could go toe-to-toe with TCU's athleticism. And if it's a pretty even playing field on that part, I don't love this coaching matchup. But if TCU is significantly more talented at key spots, then a lot tougher for Bill to just scheme up whatever he wants to do. But my friend Tommy Fisher pointed out yesterday, was like, he's known for, and this was his reputation in the NFL, he's always been known for taking away whatever it is you do best. So he's going to watch this tape of Josh Hoover and be like, all right, we're not going to allow you to just dink and dunk us to death and throw these short passes and get easy yards. And TCU will have to find a way to adjust. So that season opener becomes more and more intriguing as Bill Belichick takes the reins at North Carolina. Bowl game coming up a couple of days after Christmas. The New Mexico Bowl in Albuquerque. TCU will take on Louisiana. And there's a lot of subplots to this. One of them being, okay, you want to get some young guys involved. There are most likely going to be some opt-outs, some current players who say, you know what, I don't feel the need to get out there and risk anything in this bowl game. And one particular spot that I'm watching closely, what do they do with Haas Haney? And not only in this game, but moving forward, because I don't think there is a tougher job in sports right now than keeping a young, highly rated quarterback happy. And what I mean by that is these guys come on campus. They've always played. They want to play right away. And if you can't deliver that, then it's really easy to get restless. So Haas has played this season. He's been in this sort of wildcat quarterback role almost. I would expect that to continue. He'll take over the de facto kind of Savion package if Savion can't play. But this seems like the perfect opportunity to allow him to throw the ball around some. You want to win, but it's not a conference game. You're playing a team that if you have your head on straight, you would hope that you can maintain a pretty decent lead for the majority of the contest. So let him get it out there and air it out. I mean, they haven't done that all season long. Let's go into the offseason allowing him some live reps in some passing situations. And then going into next year, I think the key is just you got to communicate as clearly as possible. Josh Hoover was great this season. Now, some of you might disagree with that statement. That's fine. I think overall he did a really good job. Interceptions were an issue, but for what they were asking him to do each week, the pressure that was on him with the lack of the running game, and some of that was that he's not mobile himself, I feel like he did well. So you just got to be open and honest about it. And if Haas expects a full-on quarterback competition, then that's a hard conversation that's got to be had. But as far as this game goes, let him throw the ball. Let him run this offense to the fullest extent of his ability and just get a good look of where he's at outside of practice when things are live and real and getting those reps. So that's something that I'm intrigued by or just looking for in this ball game. We'll come back and get some of your thoughts here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. If you're looking for tickets to a game, movie, theater production, comedy show, whatever it is, check out the Gametime app. Specifically, if you're looking for sports tickets, because you're listening to this show, you want to be at a game. Gametime app, they have last-minute deals and flash sales. So if you're a procrastinator or if you're somebody that's like, you know what, I want to wait this out and see if this price is going to drop, you can do that with the Gametime app. Download it today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off your first purchase. Terms and conditions do apply. Gametime. Use it today. Best ticketing app on the secondary market. So yesterday we discussed transfer portal targets. We talked about Bill Belichick taking that job in UNC. Cole Rogers says, this conversation gave me the urge to look at the 2025 schedule. I can't help but wonder why the Big 12 is not putting TCU versus Baylor on rivalry week as a strategy to get TCU to Baylor to compete for TV ratings with lesser games. Yeah, I don't know. I've had that thought too. I think I mentioned it before the Cincinnati game. I was like, TCU's playing Cincinnati, Baylor's playing Kansas. Like, it doesn't make sense. Put it on the last week of the season. I don't know why they've never figured that out. But even when the rivalry was at its peak, in 2014 it wasn't. It was the middle of the year. And then 2015, I believe it was TCU's last game because it was on Black Friday. But I think Baylor had one more game after that. I feel like they played Texas the next week, and they lost. But, yeah, I think they had one more after that ball game. But anyway, I don't get it either. I feel like that's an unforced error by the Big 12. Vince says, what does Colorado, Boise State, and North Carolina have right now that TCU doesn't? Relevancy. Every channel is talking about North Carolina and whether they'll get Bill or not. TCU needs to get more relevant in the big picture. Yeah, I mean, you have to, and that comes down to winning games. So I think being on a national stage or Bill's college football debut is going to be huge. And then can you stay in the conversation throughout the season so that you're playing big-time games against opponents that mean something? The good news is, and good news, bad news, you're playing some heavy hitters next year. I mean, you get Iowa State, you get Colorado, you get K-State. So you're playing the teams that are most likely going to be, in the mix for a conference title, and hopefully you're right there with them with a chance to get it done. Jacob says, I hope we can ruin his debut. I thought we would ruin Dion's, but Chandler Morris had other plans. Well, Chandler, that TCU defense, they could not get a stop that day. But you're right. Chandler he had some costly turnovers for sure. And Joe Gillespie was not ready for Shedeur Sanders and what he could do, and he just kind of let him sit back there and make things happen. That was a rough day. I talked a lot of noise before that ball game. Not even really because I wanted to, but just because Colorado fans sort of put me in a position where I had to because they were so boisterous about coming in here and taking our lunch money. And then, well, unfortunately they did it. So I liked how this year went a lot better, and hopefully we're building on it again going into 2025. And that starts by acquiring talent. So I'll have plenty more on the transfer portal on Friday's show and other topics. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.